My friend who is joining me now is the respected anchor for New York One. He is also a frequent, almost everyday contributor to CNN, and he is Errol Louis. Mr. Louis, good morning. How are you, sir?
Good morning. Good morning. Good to be with you, Rennie.
It is always good to have you here, my friend. Last time we spoke, we both chuckled because I mentioned the possibility of Donald Trump being the president of the United States, and we both chuckled because we thought it would not happen. Ha, ha, ha. Egg is on our faces. As a matter of fact, the president-elect in a few days will, in fact, be the president of the United States. Are you still in shock, or have you recovered?
I have somewhat recovered, but what I can't get used to is the implications of this surprise. I mean, the surprise should not throw people off too much, because we later discovered that even the Trump campaign did not think they were going to win. They were as surprised as anyone else. Out of about 120 million people who voted, this really came down to about 100,000 people spread across 3 states. So it really could have easily gone the other way, but it didn't. Now we have to deal with the implications, and that is kind of hard to get your hands around, because this is somebody who has never served in government in any capacity, has never served in the military in any capacity, who has no philosophy or track record that's coherent that you can point to. So people are understandably very worried about what might happen.
The voice you're hearing is that of Errol Louis, CNN contributor and the anchor for New York One in New York City. The reason we got together this morning is not just to discuss what will happen after the 20th, but more importantly to look that after 8 years, bringing back the economy from the brink, providing affordable health care to millions, removing sanctions on Cuba, resisting Israel's Netanyahu expansionist desires, embattled in a stubborn battle with Vladimir Putin and a revitalized China, Barack Obama, one would argue, leaves a very large shoe print. However, the question of his legacy surviving this new administration comes in is what's up in question. Errol Louis, what will the legacy of Barack Obama be?
But, it's interesting. You ticked off a lot of the big-ticket items. I mean, certainly in the short term, the fate of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, and whether or not 20-odd million people who have insurance who did not have health insurance before, what will happen to them, what will happen to what is, after all, 1/6 of the economy, that's going to be kind of the first question. I think the next question becomes, and it's related, is what will happen to the unprecedented level of expansion. We've never had such a long economic expansion. Back when you and I were growing up, Rennie, it was a 5-year cycle that we were used to. You'd see about 3.5 years of expansion followed by a crash of one in the 70s, in the 80s, inflation, disruption. We've seen slow growth, but it has been steady growth in a way that we really had never seen since the end of the Second World War. So that is part of Obama's legacy as well, is that his economic stewardship really brought about, we're at under 5% unemployment at this point, which is essentially full employment. That will certainly be part of his legacy, that people will try to damage and smirch, but if they're wise, actually try to extend it in some way. And then I guess on the diplomatic side, you're exactly right about what he tried to do in the regions of the world. In particular, his legacy, I think, will be kind of a letter to the future of what he wanted to do as far as making the United States more open to Asia, although it looks like those hopes are going to be frustrated after next Friday.
I think he also made very clear to the citizenry at large, winning the White House is not the end of the revolution. Number 44, Barack Obama, the first black president, and many believe the last in our lifetime, Errol. He's being replaced by the Electoral College selected minority vote elected Donald Trump Twitter. Or is that Donald Twitter Trump? How optimistic are you, and from what you have gathered, the world, and specifically Americans, as to unstable times that lie ahead?
Well, I think there are some problems, for sure. And to me, the things that make me optimistic are that people are pushing and fighting back. And there's evident. There was a demonstration in Washington yesterday. There's going to be a very big one the day after the inauguration. Something like 20 members of Congress have announced that they are not going to come to the inauguration. They're boycotting it, including at least 5 from New York City, from his home city. So there's something there that you can be optimistic about, which is that people have not been bowled over and have not been fooled into thinking that some fundamental change in the country's political mood has happened. They understand that this was a very close election, and that those who do not support Trump have every right and reason to continue organizing politically, because there'll be another election. On the pessimistic side, we have a lot of institutions that are being damaged and being weakened, and that includes the media, and that includes the election system itself. That includes our foreign policy establishment, and most recently, that includes our intelligence agencies. And that does concern me, because when an institution is fundamentally broken, and I guess, for your listeners, Rennie, the closest I could come to is, the events of 1990. It shakes your morale. It makes you wonder if you can really get on the right path, and makes people, I believe, make individual decisions to leave, or to pull back. And I don't want to see that happen here.
Currently in the green room, Errol Louis is my guest, and thank you, Errol, for understanding that even my question was shaky, because I should have asked the question, how optimistic is it for Americans for a stable 4 years? And I totally got unstable on that one. Errol, let's continue into Donald Trump. What we're coming to, we see China hitting back this morning. We see Mexico hitting back this morning. We see instability shaping up more so in the Middle East. We see questions about NATO's commitment to Europe. A lot of things seem to be in question even before the 45th president takes up the Oval Office. Rough times are ahead. There's one thing to say. You may have a bumpy ride, but it looks as though indigestion is going to be the least of our concern. This could be a very, very rough 4 years coming.
I think so. I mean, listen, we are in what the CNN commentator Fareed Zakaria called the post-American world, where the brief time on stage, 20-odd years, that there was essentially one functioning superpower, the United States, that time has come to a close. There are other centers of power. There are other clusters of influence and economic power that are rising up and associating with themselves all over the world. And you have to have some kind of a plan for what happens next. The post-war American dominance is clearly going to be either ending or transformed in a fundamental way. And we have a president-elect who has never really, in any coherent way, addressed where the country is supposed to go beyond America first, make America great again. Believe me, those slogans don't resonate in Moscow or in Beijing or in Mexico City,
and
or in Paris, London, or Germany, or Berlin. They don't want to hear any of that stuff.
And very soon it will not even resonate in the White House if we continue this way. So a big spat has come up because of John Lewis. Of course, John almost lost his life. He's a civil rights activist back to the time of Martin Luther King, bringing civil rights issues to the fore. And recently he questioned the legitimacy of Donald Trump. Mr. Trump, of course, used his media arm Twitter and attacked John Lewis. Your comment on that?
Well, I mean, I think the reality is John Lewis, we know now, is one of 20 members of Congress, and the list seems to be growing each day, who said that they're not coming to the inauguration. They have some fundamental problems with the legitimacy of the outcome of this election, and they have multiple reasons for thinking that. In John Lewis's case, he said it was because of the Russian interference in the election. He doesn't see Trump as legitimate. Now, I would probably disagree with that particular assessment, because there are a lot of other reasons that you could conclude that there are some legitimacy issues here. But he's certainly entitled to it, and so he had a big fight on his hands, and a huge outpouring from all across the country just in the last 24 hours of people supporting John Lewis, who is in fact an American hero, who did in fact make it possible for us to have sort of black enfranchisement There are photos of him being beaten. There are photos of him being arrested. There are photos of him with literally blood on his shirt. Photos of him linking arms with Dr. King. The man is just a hero. And the fact that they're around the same age makes it possible to just kind of do a year-by-year comparison.
Yes.
Of,
where were you?
When one was fighting for civil rights, the other was, building casinos or something like that.
I got to close this down, Errol Louis, because I know that you have your own commitment, and I also want to ask you one question before you go. You familiar with that place, Biloxi, Mississippi?
Oh, sure. I've been through there.
You mean that is the place that Medgar Evers lost his life because they were trying to get a beach open so everyone can have access to it. They are making news right now because they are renaming MLK Day, which is being celebrated tomorrow, Great American Day, the Great American Heroes Day, or whatever they're calling it. What is your take on that situation?
Well, it's interesting. There's a lecture I heard with a great title where they call Martin Luther King the inconvenient hero. And he really is. He really is. There are people who, to this day, hate and despise the man and everything that he stood for. And they want to erase him from the history books. And so in this case, they're calling it Great American Day, and they're pairing him up with Robert E. Lee and some of the other Confederate slaveholders. And trying to sort of let it all be lost in a cloud of ambiguity for future generations as far as what happened and who did what. This can't necessarily succeed in the long term. It becomes one more fight in a region that has been fighting over these issues for literally 100+ years.
Yes, indeed. A lot of people in Trinidad and Tobago will wonder, well, why did you go there? I went there for one reason, and which is the same reason that folks in Europe are concerned about and people across the world are concerned about, that with the advent of Donald Trump, reigning as the president of the United States, a lot of closet emotions are coming out, and I think what we see in Mississippi is one such thing. So this isolationist mentality, this one group politics is something that will not only be of concern to the rest, to America and the rest of the world, but it also overlaps into areas like the Cuba policy, like the Caribbean policy. That whole isolationist movement seems to be given a new voice, and it does make me wonder what we are going to see for countries like ours here in Trinidad and Tobago in the next 4 years.
Well, these are very, very important questions, and at another time, you and I should talk about the debt crisis that is currently destabilizing Puerto Rico and is also brewing in the Virgin Islands. There's been very little attention paid to it, but we got some big problems we're going to all have to deal with in the next 4 years. So people want to think that the election is over, but a new political season has just begun.
Keep in mind you have Trinidadian connections. we'll always keep your name at the airport. Errol Louis, my brother, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this morning. You and your wonderful family have yourself a wonderful day, sir.
All right, you too. Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you so much.